Canabalt, the Finji game that popularized the infinite runner genre, is back online with two-player mode, new challenges, new music, new achievements, and new leaderboards. And we're celebrating today by chatting with Finji director Adam Saltzman and Cameron Taylor, who recently ported the game for HTML5. Let's start, of course, with introductions. I'm Aster, community and social media manager at Finji. Adam, why don't you go first?
Sure thing. Yeah. Hi, I'm Adam Saltzman, and I was the designer and programmer and artist, and most importantly, Foley artist on Canabalt, which was in some ways culpable for the whole infinite runner situation. And I am still the creative director here at Finji, and I'm working on a game called Usual June. Yeah.
Awesome. And how about you, Cameron?
Yes, my name is Cameron Taylor. I'm a programmer. I love Newgrounds. I love open source things. I love video games, and I help make the current video game Friday Night Funkin'.
Is the G at the end of that canon? I've never heard it with the G.
Non-canon.
Non-canon. I like it. I like it. It gives it a certain je ne sais quoi. It's nice.
Yeah, a little spice on it, a little salt and pepper on that.
A little English on it. It's good.
Adam, can you talk a little bit about how Canabalt came to be? I know there's quite a story there.
Yeah, I'll do. I may do the short version, and then if anybody wants to know more, let me know. But lo, these many years passed, something like 2009 in the summer. I was there was a cool online game making event coming up called the what was it called? Experimental Gameplay Project, I think, which was spinning off of some work that had been done at Carnegie Mellon, and I work the lowercase w work, I think, which was the Experimental Gameplay Project. There was this cool thing that Kyle Gabler and Kyle Gray had been doing. You probably know their work now as like World of Goo or the bunch of cool like procedural programming things that they've been doing since then. But before that, they were making these little flash games, and they would only spend a few days making the flash game, and it would have some kind of cool little gameplay hook, and then they would kind of move on to the next thing. And the big World of Goo game was based on one of those kind of concepts or prototypes. And I was just obsessed with this idea because I didn't have a lot of time to make my own games because I had to work. They moved the project from being something that was happening largely on the Carnegie Mellon campus to kind of organizing it online. And they announced this thing, which was like, hey, during the month of, I think it was August, take and maybe, I think it was like 5 days or less, and make a flash game and submit it to this page. And the theme is like minimalism. Let's see some cool minimalist game designs, everybody. And I've been doing a little bit of flash programming for a couple of years at that point, and thought I was thinking a lot about Super Mario Brothers 1 speedruns, which have this funny quality to them where you basically you hold the right arrow on the D-pad and you hold down the run button, and then you just press the jump button at just the exactly perfect time, and you can play all of Super Mario Brothers 1 in like 3 minutes and 58 seconds. And this is probably not news to anybody in this year of our Luigi 2024, but that was kind of like, that felt kind of like fresh and cool and interesting to me back in 2008. And you could see these videos of like a packed theater and like head-to-head speed runs of Mario 1, and people screaming and cheering and people getting new world records. But I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about some of the minimalist games that were coming out for like Nokia phones, for candy bar phones. You like how this is a short version? This is my short version of this story.
It's exactly what I expected.
Yeah, you know what my issues are. Either way, basically, I was thinking those candy bar phones, those Nokia phones, had a couple of really cool little minimalist games on them. One of them was called Tower Blocks, where it was a one button game, which was really important because even though candy bar phones look like they have a lot of buttons, you can only ever press one at a time. So making video games for them that were pretty solid was pretty challenging, but at a design level, not just a technical level. And so that was in my head a lot, and was kind of thinking like, oh, whoa, I wonder if you could make like a whole action game where you only press one button, which I did not invent that. Like that was a thing that was around for a while. But that's the thing that I was thinking a lot about, was like, what would be really fun? And I was also thinking about, Prince of Persia. If anybody remembers Prince of Persia 2 specifically, the very first thing that happens is the prince gets chased out of a hallway by some guards and jumps through a window, and glass flies everywhere, and he lands on a rooftop. So yeah, there was all these kind of things jumbling around, but the main thing was like, I bet I could make something like this in 5 days. I bet I could make a little Mario guy that never stops running, and he goes on the rooftops and he jumps out of windows, and that looks cool. I could probably make that in 5 days. I'll just only use like 6 colors. And I got really good input. I got to go to a game jam in the middle of it, and I got really great feedback and input from friends. There was a really cool artist at that game jam, and I really wanted to impress him. So I was like, I'm gonna make like the coolest game. He's gonna be like so impressed. He didn't really care. But we'd known each other online for years, and it was just fun to like sit there and try to come up with something cool. And yeah, just like, I guess it was a couple weekends of fussing around in Flash and trying to make a game with Tony Hawk controls where you like press the button and release to jump, and realizing that did not suit this game at all. Then put it up online, and then got a really big bill from my web host because way too many people played it. And that was like, oh, wow, this is a new kind of problem. This is exciting. I like this. I think I like this. I think that was most of it. And then, and of course, shout outs to Daniel Baranowski, who wrote the kind of iconic soundtrack for the game, really last minute and for free. Like, I was just like, hey, I have this game. We'd already worked together on a few other projects. And I was like, I know I paid you for the last game. I can't pay you for this one because I don't have a budget for it right now, and I'm just making it this weekend. But if you want to hang out and make this thing together, like I promise we'll figure it out. And Danny was reimbursed super well for his amazing contributions after the fact. But I think that's all the things. That is so not the short version.
It's a good version though. Can you talk a little bit? I know you've gone over a lot, but can you talk a little bit about Canabalt's atmosphere? Because it's pretty obvious you like a good apocalypse. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the inspiration for that.
Yeah, I have a type. I think the thing that might surprise people the most is at the time that I made the game, I did not like the movie The Matrix. I still made a game about essentially Keanu Reeves jumping out of an office building with a dope Matrix sounding soundtrack. These things just happen sometimes. There was a specific thing that I was excited about though, which was a little bit of just like things that are bumping around in my head, like foggy cityscapes with clear planes of silhouettes I think just look cool. And there's like, that goes all the way back to like Sonic the Hedgehog 2 tile maps and things like that, when you go to the like weird oil factory and there's just all these like kind of evocative silhouettes of like smokestacks in the background or whatever, like oil rig looking stuff. I just like those things. But there was a lot of like, in minimalist games especially, there was kind of a tendency to have these really blank backgrounds. And I remember that being like, I had like a chip on my shoulder about that. I kind of felt like there's just this canvas back here. Like you could put a little bit of a place together that had maybe the story that you can't afford to put in your game because you're only working on the game for like 5 days. Maybe you could just like draw it back there and hope that's okay or something. I think mostly it was just like predominantly liking the vibe of those old Sonic the Hedgehog 2 kind of like foggy cityscape backgrounds. And then probably having just seen like War of the Worlds or District 9 or both. District 9 had really cool like foggy alien silhouettes of stuff stomping around in cities kind of thing going on. I don't know. I have a type, you know. The other shout out for me is actually Half-Life 2. That was like a lot of the audio. I was really trying to emulate the way that they did some of the sound design and some of the weird tall shapes in that game. That was really, I still think it's really like evocative and strange and cool. Like the alien things in that game have this almost Earth sound that I still think is like really very cool. Like all the trains and robots and things sound sort of like construction machinery, but not correct. Like they went to an uncanny valley for audio on purpose or something. And I thought that was so cool. I don't know that I achieved any of my goals with that, but that was like in mind a lot about like what's a small way to add a big feeling, kind of.
So you mentioned this a little bit back in, a little bit earlier in the conversation, but can you tell us a little bit about the reaction to Canabalt's launch in 2009? I know it was bigger than you expected.
Yeah, it blew up, and it blew up really totally organically. I put it on my own website. You used to have to just go to atomatomic.com/Canabalt to load it up. And I think it probably got played by like 10 million people. And the game itself, as Cameron knows, is only like most of the game is only about 200 kilobytes, so it wasn't supposed to be a problem. The dope soundtrack was like 3 megabytes, which also wasn't supposed to be a problem. But if like 10 million people play it, then it swiftly becomes a problem for your 2009 era web host. And I had to start trying to learn how to do like Amazon, like enterprise level Amazon file storage and hot swapping on bandwidth. I made a web app for my iPhone where if I got an email from my web host that I had blown through my hosting again, I could load it up and tap a button to switch it over to Amazon, but like just from a little browser interface that I wrote, because that way I could get the first like terabyte of traffic free cheap on my web host, and then only move over to the metered Amazon store. Is that interesting?
It's beautifully scrappy.
Awesome.
I want to know about it.
I never would have known about that. I'm too spoiled with itch and Newgrounds and all these just game jolts.
Yeah,
I'm way too spoiled.
It's better now. It's definitely better now. It probably was better then, and I was just a dummy too. So I don't know. But yeah, it was cool, and like I would say like the financial impact of the game was nice, but not necessarily life changing. But I think the popularity of the game and my presence as the author was legitimately like life-changing for me, because suddenly I could introduce myself to people that I wanted to know because I admired their work, and that's often just hard to do, and this opened the door for that. My favorite memory was being at an industry party, and one of my favorite memories about this, being at an industry party and getting introduced to Jordan Mechner, who was the author and the artist and the programmer on the Prince of Persia games, the original Prince of Persia games, which like were a very specific reference for the rotoscope style character animation and jumping through windows and things. And so I pulled out my iPhone and I was like, Jordan, can I show you the game that I've been working on? Because like Prince of Persia 2 especially was really present in mind when I was working on it. And I showed it to him, and he played a couple of rounds and kind of like had a cool smile on his face when he saw the little rotoscope style guy jump through the window, and he knew where I, had kind of picked that up from. And then he handed me back my phone and he said, I think you've got something here. I think this is going to take off. It had already been played by like 15 million people at that point, but it was still really lovely. Like I grew up in the middle of nowhere in rural Michigan, so the idea that I might meet the guy who had programmed and done the art for a game that I played on like the neighbor's DOS computer because I couldn't afford to get Prince of Persia on my own computer yet. Like, I don't know, all of that, it seemed like one of those impossible things. So I have a lot of gratitude for the game happening to catch on in the way that it did, specifically because of that. That is the thing that about its release that still sticks with me and still matters, for how I do things today.
I'm wondering how much of there's this value that it's so obvious that you have of like mentoring people in the industry. Just from working with you, that's super obvious to me. And I wonder like how much of that comes from this time, if any of it.
Oh, an enormous amount. Yeah. Like, cause I knew nothing. I was like profoundly desperate to meet people who were interested in making the things that I was interested in making so that I could try to figure out how to do anything. Like even making Flash games, my beautiful friend, Ivan Safran, just like spent like 2 or 3 days just getting on Skype calls and just taught me how to compile my own Flash games. Without using Adobe software. There's no reason he had to do that. I think he just wanted to. Like he wanted me to have that for whatever reason, and it was like totally life-changing. Like the design people that I was talking to, like getting to go to game designers like at the time Steve Swink was somebody I was talking to about stuff in Canabalt, and who was helping frame things, and Ed McMillan, and just like always and still depend on so many other people's good judgment that I have just I love the idea that maybe I could be to other people sort of like what those people were for me, maybe, because like I appreciate so much that people gave me things that let me do the stuff that I do. I don't
Absolutely.
100% know why they did. Like I didn't give them anything back necessarily, except like we hung out and made games together for fun, I guess, which totally matters. But like it seemed, I don't know, that generosity matters a lot to me.
Yeah. Cameron, I'm wondering when did you first start playing the game? Was it around then or later? How did you find it?
Yeah, I suppose I'm a bit of a younger gentleman. I'm just 24 years old right now. So in 2009, I was 9 years old and I barely knew how to use a computer. So I didn't get to play the game until like 2014 or 2015. Mr. Markiplier Game. He made the video about Canabalt.
There's a Markiplier video about Canabalt?
What? You didn't know that? Dude, that's like classic.
What?
He's just like gushing about like, it's like, man, this is like classic Flash game. This is like,
yeah, complete
what
gaming
inspired
addiction.
like all these.
I have no idea about this.
Yeah, dude. Whoa,
That's
dude,
dope.
it's like, yeah. Markiplier's
9 years
like,
ago. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wait,
he's a real
do
one.
I owe my career to Markiplier? This has never crossed my mind before.
It all came together, dude.
Wow.
But yeah, I saw that video, and that's kind of what put Canabalt into my mind and my brain, I guess. And that was also around the time I was like getting very into kind of indie games and even like web games in general. I guess kind of through Markiplier. I saw some other cute little indie games that he played and shit like that. But then I suppose I started making games myself using the framework Hack's Flixel, which is kind of the descendant of the Flixel framework that Adam made and worked on and used for Canabalt itself. And so from that, Canabalt has kind of always been in my, the back of my mind of like, it's like, oh, this awesome, cute little pixel art game was made in, a short amount of time. And it was awesome. And it was made in kind of the same-ish coding framework that was made that I use. So I was kind of always, always impressed by it, always inspired by it. As many other, just game designers do when if they make a infinite runner game. It's like, oh, Canabalt is this cool, awesome kind of like tiny little infinite runner game, and it's just beautiful. So it's kind of always been on my map. It's always been kind of in the back of my mind from that, of just like, this kind of niche-ish game framework that, it's not like it's Unity where you can just see these like big, commercial games being made. It's like Haxflixel is a bit of a, Flixel itself is a bit of a kind of nicher framework. So I've always kind of kept this like library of games that are awesome that were made in it in the back of my mind. Yeah, so I guess my experience with it is just like, it's like, damn, this is I don't need Unity to make a cool little game like this. I got Flash, baby. I got little pixel arts. I don't need none of that junk. So I don't know. I've always been inspired by it from kind of those reasons, as well as just, Newgrounds web game, classic web game.
Can either of you or both of you explain a little bit more about how Canabalt serves as a template for game designers, especially for those of us listening who might not be game designers?
I guess I'll poke in as the freshman designer, as the freshman kind of game developer. I guess I've always been kind of inspired by it, by it being a very kind of short developed game jam game. Very it is very accessible, just one button kind of jump. You see obstacle, you jump. One thing I did, I don't know if it lends into the realm of templates, but it's a very specific example of the teaching through gameplay is even though it's a one button game, one thing I always just was impressed by was like, there's those two obstacles in the beginning hallway, and then the window with the gap. And if you don't jump over the obstacles and you don't jump through the window, then you die. And I always thought, I was like, wow, that's genius. That's like, the rule of threes. It's like strike one, strike two, strike three, where it's like, if you jump once, you make it past the gap, and it's like, okay, I taught the player how to jump. It's like, I don't know if that was intentional whatsoever, but I always imagined that to be intentional.
Yeah, I think possibly not as articulate as your version, but there was a very there was a thing that was like, some big action game nerd. I love action games, but I also like my favorite action game is Vanquish, and my second favorite action game is God Hand, and these are notoriously, I think, maybe like reevaluated in a post Dark Souls world, but these I think have historically been considered like notoriously inaccessible action games. And I definitely was gravitating at that time toward like, what if we make an action game where every individual jump is kind of easy? It's just, if you do goof up twice in a row out of 200, 300, 400 attempts, then that will be game over. I didn't love games where it was like, oh, you goofed up one time, it's all over. I still kind of put that in, right? I still put in like the little narrow hallways that you have to land in somehow. Yeah. But in general, I liked the idea of, and I'm still like very, very into this, is the idea of like the natural 20 saving throw from D&D or something like that. Just because you died, maybe you're not dead. Kind of like, I just love the generosity of that, I think. So I was definitely thinking like that Canabalt was never going to be a game that was about perfection. It was going to be a game about a little bit more about like flow. And part of that comes from an old Flash game called Captain Forever, which I think has been riffed on a lot since then. But it was a game where you like have a little spaceship, you shoot other spaceships and they break into parts, but you can grab those parts and glom them onto your spaceship. That's the core mechanic, but the world design of it was really cool because you had these like pings on your radar that would indicate to you different sizes of spaceship. So you get a ping to one side of the screen for like a little bitty spaceship, and a ping to the other side of the screen for a giant spaceship. And it was like a little bit like a Goldilocks situation, like you're trying to find the ship to fight that's just right for you, but like organically, like not because you have to do it a certain way. You could go fight that giant scary ship right now if you wanted to, and you're a good enough pilot. Or you could go fight this dinky little ship. You're only going to get like 2 jets off of it or something, and 1 little laser cannon. You could go fight this more like Goldilocks opponent, but there are going to be more risks than the little ones. You could pick off the little one and then go find a medium-sized one. But it had this like sense of agency to it that felt, at the time, that felt like very subversive to me. This idea that you're not lockstep on playing a Mega Man game or something, where it's like you play this level this way, and if a guy hits you, you die. It was more like, yeah, there was this agency and this choice and this preference thing that seemed really cool. And I thought, oh, that would be cool for these soft obstacles, I guess. That maybe those could like stand in and do that. And I remember like sitting at this omelet place with Steve Swink specifically, and we're just talking nonstop about Captain Forever and trying to figure out the trick of an arcade game is it's supposed to always get harder, right? Like that's like you do level 1, level 2 is harder than level 1, and level 3 is harder than level 2. So if you're making an endless arcade game, like the difficulty just always goes up. Like it felt like we were missing something. And the thing that to me seemed like it was missing that I loved about Captain Forever was this choice of like, I am really exhausted from that big battle. I'm going to go do a couple of easy battles, but then I'm coming back to the big battle. Like the idea that there's room for that, I love that. I think that's a really cool thing that, and it's really well suited to doing procedural generation stuff too, which was a big thing in Captain Forever. So I think Farb's work on that design and how he was thinking about how to do progress in that game was this is a long-winded explanation for like I put some boxes in a hallway, but I remember having that conversation and being really, really excited to put the boxes in the hallway because it was like, yeah, it was like there's going to be just like a 3 strikes thing. Like you have to press the jump button. That's it. And I still think about this like on our current work is like I want people to participate, but I don't need that much from them. I don't need anybody to play for 8 straight hours so that they learn that you can like hold down the left trigger and the left bumper when you dodge in order to like finish your combo, or else you can't beat the lion knight or whatever. Like I don't need that. Just like press the button and then and then you're on the adventure with me. But I do need you to press the button. It'll be weirder if you don't have to. That's where my head was at. I think actually it's very much where my head is still at. That is just what I like.
Kind of want it on a t-shirt.
Yeah,
you just gotta push the button to be on the adventure. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say where it's like, yeah, that I feel like that is still relevant for games of all kinds, especially kind of smaller. I guess if you want to be specific, little infinite runner games where it's like boot up Temple Run or something, and it's like, well, you get that little cutscene where you're getting chased by all those crazy creatures, and then it's like you do kind of just run until you run into obstacle, and then it's like you could just watch that and just play it over and over, and it's not like you don't get the kind of same almost like forced gameplay thing. Not to say that Temple Run's bad. I think Temple Run's also awesome.
Yeah.
But
totally.
I think that kind of minimum participation where it's like okay, all you need is like you get those kind of three tries, I guess. The 3 strikes is kind of the way I looked at it.
Yeah.
In Canabalt.
And you can recharge, right? Like I wanted to have like,
yeah,
if you do screw up once or twice, but you kind of squeak through it, you'll build up that speed again. It's almost like your speed is your health bar or something. Not really, but sort of. And I still love that kind of thing. Like that was the huge thing for Vanquish, which is like that game has recharging health bar, but it came out at a time when game designers were like, recharging health bars is just lazy game design. It doesn't make any sense. How come you just like heal? You're supposed to find a health pack. Everybody knows that. Your health packs is how you do this. And so everybody was mad about recharging health bars, and then Vanquish was just like, there's nothing wrong with recharging health bars, they're just not being used in a fun way. Here's something you could do with it that's really fun. And I kind of felt like that a lot. Like you should have like more fun fail states, like eating shit and then it's not game over. Like it just seems like more fun. But if you really are just pile driving it, if you're really just face planning over and over and over, eventually I am going to kind of like come in and be like, hey, I think, are you okay? Like, should we start over? That's still so much where my heart lies with these kinds of game designs, I think.
Quick little anecdote. I guess one of the kind of instances that you mentioned in Canabalt where it's like, the narrow hallways where it's like, if you just miss it, it's like, well, that is game over. Like,
yeah.
that's the one strike and you're out. But as I was making the little HTML kind of new port, Hexflexel port, I got Tom Fulp, Mr. Tom Fulp Newgrounds to help me test it, kind of poke around, see any discrepancies, I guess, between my version and the classic Flash version. And early on, I was still kind of working on like the physics, and one thing was like, if you hit the wall, you would still like land inside the window, like your little like X velocity would still be like very low, but it would be enough to like catch the edge of the window. And he's like, it's like, this is different, but I kind of like it. I was like, it's like, Tom, sorry, Tom, but you're a noob and you're not good at video games. Just get through the window, you dumbass.
Well, it's like the one thing, right? Like every jump, be as forgiving as possible, but then it's like, okay, but this one jump, not so much.
Yeah.
But that's the only one, and then like also gating that, like I think windows are set to not appear for a certain amount of time, and the challenge level of the window, like how narrow the hallways, I think is based on your speed also, or something like that. Yeah. So like there is this thing of like, hey, when you're ready, I got some gnarly stuff that'll come out, but you have to like opt in. You have to like demonstrate on some level that like you don't want to hit these soft obstacles and you want to take these riskier jumps, and then sure, yeah, I'll throw one of the nasty hallways your way. Like, but I feel like we're in I'm in dialogue with the player on some level at that point.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like it's their fault. Like you wanted this. Like if you didn't want this, you would have made other choices, and those choices were there for you.
And I feel like that's also another kind of essence of the, what you could call the template, the Canabalt game design template, where it's like, the procedural generation, it's not like it's not like something like Splunky or something where it's like, these set of levels that, little aspects of it are kind of pre-generated. The generation is very, it's very based on the current state of the game, where it's like the gaps, how far the gaps are based upon, your current speed, so that, you can make it each time. It's like your, as you mentioned, it's like the windows and hallways don't appear after, if you might be going, too fast or too slow or something like that. It's like, there's kind of like little bits of that, and I feel like that's interesting little, I feel like these kind of what's called like, roguelike generations, like are very, it's kind of just like, throw things at you and, generate the levels, and what you get is what you get, and kind of what's, it's not like something like Binding of Isaac can be like, oh, you have this, you can shoot this much, shot speed, so we're going to generate the level specifically that accommodates for the exact, shot speed you have. It's like, the levels are the levels.
Yes.
Whereas, Canabalt is like, it's based on the current state of the game.
Yeah,
and,
I was really
obsessed
at
that point.
I was so obsessed with, like, I call it reactive level generation, and I was really obsessed with it partly because it's a thing you can't do a static level design, obviously, or can't do, as the opportunities are harder to see or whatever. like the initial idea was like, oh, if I generate the levels, I don't have to design the levels, and that'll save me a lot of time, which is a classic early game developer. Like, oh, I'll just procedurally generate the game. That'll save me so much time. And you just spend tons of time doing stuff related to that instead of just authoring a couple of levels. So initially was like, oh, I don't have a level designer. I don't really want to do level design. I don't think it matters for this game. I'll just do it procedurally. But as soon as I started kind of like pushing on that, it was like, oh, this could be like, because Gravity Hook was all generated in advance. It was like rules about how far you had gone and what kind of generation would happen based on your progress. And so Canabalt very specifically was like, I think it would be cool to do it reactively and see what happens, because the other thing that was in like the discourse, the design discourse at the time, was the idea that dynamic difficulty adjustment was bad and you shouldn't do it. Like people found out that if you died 5 times to the same boss in Resident Evil 4, it secretly put the game on easy mode, and were like not happy about it. Nobody was unhappy about it until it was revealed that that's what was happening. Everybody thought it was perfectly fine when they didn't know it was happening. As soon as they knew it was happening, very spicy, not okay. But that was like floating around because reactive level generation has a lot of the same pitfalls, right? It's like gameable. Like if certain obstacles only appear when you're going at 20 miles an hour, then you might try to keep the game at exactly 20 miles an hour, such that it's like you're programming it to react to you in a certain way. And that'll happen in like any game that has some kind of reactive generative element to it. Like, oh, if your health is low, when you open the treasure chest, you're more likely to get a health pop-up instead of a something, right? Like games have those sorts of things sprinkled all through them, but it felt like as soon as you were over the hump of like, well, I'm not going to use a level editor, I'm going to generate this anyway, there was this very tantalizing sense of like, well, maybe I can because like Left 4 Dead was a really popular game at the time also, and they had this idea of like, we're monitoring what's happening in the gameplay, and we're trying to respond to it in a way that's fun. They had their AI director feature or whatever, which was like, oh, if everybody's almost dead, we're going to tone down the zombie wave, have a couple of extra health packs appear, but then you're going to get swamped, and maybe that'll create like a cool dramatic situation. But that was like, wait, that's good. Dynamic difficulty adjustment is bad, but AI drama director is good. Oh, okay. But it felt like reactive level generation was a way to like poke at that a little bit. And I did a lot on Capsule also, which was like being attentive to the game state and trying to do things maybe that were motivated, and Overland also, but like motivated by trying to be interesting as opposed to letting people cheat or get necessarily harder or easier. Like I loved that AI director idea, and loved the idea of that expressing in the level design somehow. I love that feeling. I think our current project does not have generative level design, but still thinking about like all the ways that action games can lean into the idea of like, here's some tools, here's a space. I'm not gonna make you go through here in a certain way. I would love for you to like play in this space and, you know, play the notes that you want to play in this space. I think that's just where my heart is at. That's not like the only kind of good game there is. Like that's just like where my arcade heart sits for sure.
One thing that kind of always immediately comes to mind when I think about Canabalt is and maybe this will lead to another 10-minute kind of tangent, but the the sound design. I saw that the little indie game, the movie kind of documentary short about Canabalt, and in that you mentioned, and it kind of does the sound effects stuff where it's like kind of the simple idea of like this lo-fi, pixel art kind of game with this very hi-fi soundtrack and these hi-fi, high quality kind of sound effects, and that has kind of always like stuck in my mind whenever I think about Canabalt, of like the immediate kind of influence that kind of always like sticks out specifically to me. This kind of very I don't know, you could say like mismatch of styles, mismatch of aesthetics of blocky pixel art. I feel like that's definitely one thing that has very influenced me in my brain.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that was the only thing that the composer Daniel Baranowski and I initially disagreed on, and it was tricky. It was tricky to get through, not because like we had massive amounts of respect and trust in each other, so it wasn't a question of like, you know, bad communication or anything. It was just like I was like, I want this to sound like Hans Zimmer Half-Life 2. And then I showed him this little like pixel art drawing, this little like 100 like 80 pixel tall window or whatever. And he was just, and my memory is his response was, no. This is, you can't. It doesn't make any sense. You simply mustn't. And I felt like I could hear it. I was like, and I was just like, oh, we got like, and I don't recall it taking much convincing either. Like I think because Danny had been doing a lot of stuff in a community called OC Remix, where you would like use like live instruments and symphonic libraries to make remixes or covers of old beepy boopy video game music. And so I was kind of like, I knew what he could do with that, and I was like we should do that. Like we should put the symphonic, put the orchestral remix, put the blockbuster version of this game song, but just put it right in the game. Like we don't need like just put that version that I know you can do, put that in here. And yeah, I don't think it took much convincing, but I do remember it being like a really valid question. Was like, are we sure? Are you absolutely certain? Because like this, it looks like a certain kind of game. And I'm so glad that we went that route. But that was similar to like it was very much coming from like the background art angle. It was just like, how do we? It'd be fun if the place felt a little bigger.
Right.
Like that was just a really exciting idea, and I knew that I couldn't do it with the art. That was like there was no way. Like the art had to look a certain way, but maybe with the audio we could like it could live outside of that frame a little bit, and that was fun. Also, I think in general when you're working with beautiful, wonderful audio people, as soon as you come in with like, I think audio would add a lot to this. I think on some level they go, I'm in, whatever it is. My two templating notes that I'm curious about, or that always stuck out to me. One is I think it's great to make a game that has almost nothing in it, because it gives people a lot to work with. Because it's like not very long from Canabalt to it's Canabalt but with air dashing, or it's Canabalt but with sliding and front flips and parkour moves, or the classic. It's Canabalt but with guns, or it's Canabalt but with color, or like it has that, like it's really skeletal in a way, which I think is like that's a fun, generous thing to do with an arcade design. And a lot of arcade designs that spoke to me have that quality. Like Lunar Lander is really extremely skeletal and really literally in places, and like very near and dear to me for those reasons. I love that. I like that quality. I like it. I like the design purity of it, but I also like that it then is like, yeah, there's space for other stuff in here. That's fine. That's like, I didn't want to explore that, but like it's there. And then I think the other thing is like, I was trying to clean up the code libraries at that point. I'd been using them I'd been using them on my own projects for about a year at that point, year and a half maybe. Like spring 2007 was the first time that I wrote some ActionScript 3 stuff. And then I'd been kind of just like upcycling it through like my first tech test through Gravity Hook, through Fathom, and then Canabalt was kind of like the fourth public project that was upcycling these same reusable bits of code. And reusable code had a really big impact on me in college, and was like the first time that I got to make a 2D game was using a framework for C++. And I thought, oh, I want like very much the mentorship mindset still of like, I still don't know who authored that code framework that I used in college where I made my first 2D pixel art game, but I want to also do that. And I need this, like it doesn't exist. Nobody has a code framework for make a game in 4 days right now. like, well, I guess it was Game Maker, but I didn't know how to do Game Maker, and it cost money, and Flash was free.
Amen.
Yeah. And felt like, okay, this is, I need this for myself. Like, I'm writing Flixel for me, the underlying framework. I'm writing that for me because I need to be able to make these cute pixel art games, and I only ever really have like 3, 4, 5 days a month to do that tops. So I want this, but I remember being given this in the past and feeling like that opened doors. So maybe if I have enough fun using it and it's tidied up a little bit, and I take like a day or two to write some documentation, then maybe this is a thing that like other people would think was fun in the same way. Like they would get to go like, oh, I could make a game in 4 or 5 days that has no colors or gameplay or whatever. Like these low bars, but I think they're really special.
I think that kind of brings us to my next question, or at least I suspect it does, which is, Cameron, do you want to talk a little bit about what made you approach Adam Finji about updating the game for HTML5?
Yes. I guess, yeah, to kind of what Adam just said, yeah, I guess I do love cute little open source things, and I feel like where my brain is at with, I guess, open source games, where it's like almost just as Adam and many others, including myself, find these frameworks or things that are kind of just like enable you to make games. I think in video games there's like a missing piece, or in open source, I guess I mean to say, in open source there's this kind of missing piece of the source code. You can look into Flixel, you can look into Haxflixel, you can look into Godot, you can look into kind of any of these kind of frameworks and see how you can see how a game framework is made, and you can even see how a game is made, or I guess how it's exported.
Yeah.
But I guess there's the kind of essence of a game. There's a demo. I guess I always kind of as I was learning Haxflixel, I would and I still do go through the Haxflixel demos that are out there and have their kind of source code open on the Haxflixel website. And I like crazy learned a lot from just looking at the source code to the demos. Like, oh, it's like, this is how a Flix tween works, this is how this works. But I think kind of the missing piece to the open source video games kind of world is having game code kind of out there, especially I guess what I'm kind of trying to push for in my project, Friday Night Funkin', is like full kind of commercial game, like see exactly how the sausage is made, where it's like I feel like as I was growing up, as I was learning game development, kind of what I really wanted and kind of hungered for was like I guess you could say almost this like validation, where it's like everyone kind of says, every programmer is like, oh yeah, it's like, yeah, I don't know how to code, I just look up Stack Overflow. It's like, listen, coding's all just copy paste. But I guess too, it's like when you see these kind of little demos, they're very sanitized, they're very clean. All the tutorials are there's no tutorial that'll tell you it's like, yeah, this is like complete like spaghetti code, like scary, like this code is gonna like completely, like, this is a crazy hack but it fixes sound on Macintosh. It's like, there's no tutorial that'll kind of show you, it's like, yeah, you got to do this crazy. There's no crazy maniac kind of open source, or maybe not open source, but examples of code that you'll kind of get from something like a tutorial or something like a demo. So I feel like a missing piece is very much the sausage is made with adding 50 variables that are slightly different named, like, to get a specific thing, like just crazy code like that. I feel like is a bit of a missing piece. So I've kind of always been influenced by that and strive towards that. And I guess where where this came to be, what made me approach, Mr. Atomic. I was updating, I was kind of playing around Haxflixel, the website for Haxflixel, and going through the showcases page and kind of, I was kind of looking for, source code, seeing what games on the showcases page had, links to GitHub repos, whatnot. And I feel like, along with being, just inspired by Canabalt, it is, very kind of early example of, Flixel. Canabalt is, a part of this, internet flash game, culture, part of that kind of, 2008, 2009, 2010 kind of like, I guess, that kind of era of, web game, flash game, indie game kind of boom. It was kind of a piece of that. And I think while there are, these efforts of, something like Ruffle that would kind of emulates flash games, I feel like, HTML5 and just kind of pure JavaScript port kind of makes it a bit more, stable and safe for, playing. That's why, Happy Wheels and QWOP got ported, HTML5, all that kind of, it just kind of makes the preservation efforts, you could say, a bit nicer, a bit cleaner, at least to, play. So I guess I just went about and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try to see if I can report kind of Canabalt. So then, I guess I kind of just cold emailed Adam, and I was just like, hey, I know Haxflixel. I'll say I'm a master of it by now. I know everything about Flixel. I was like, hey, can I port this game? I can get like quick turnaround, and I'll do it for free just because I want to, and it won't take up too much of my time. And Adam said yes. Adam was happy, and it seemed like it made him smile, and that made me smile, and that's kind of how I went about approaching it.
Adam, did you smile?
Make me smile. I did, yeah. I came out to Becca. I was like something along the lines of, so this wasn't on my radar for this week, but like somebody just wants to do this. And it's in the spirit of like how this stuff was done, really, too. And like that was I think, like I'm super, I love how the port turned out, and I love that folks can play the game. It's very funny that like you can play it on the device that literally killed Flash now. Like there's a lot that's just been lovely about it. But yeah, for me, it was like specifically, the reason, one of the reasons that I made it and put a little Flixel logo on the front of it, and one of the reasons that like we've open sourced some of the game code related to it in the past is so exactly for the reason of like literally, how do you make the sausage? Like it is for so long just the great mystery is, you want to make sausage. You want to make sausage so bad, and nobody will tell you how to make sausage, and it is just a cursed existence. And you make up a lot of things from scratch because you don't know that you're supposed to be searching for octrees instead of whatever other idiot data structure that you shouldn't know about but do need to know about. I love that part of it. I think that is like that's my favorite part. Is it's like, oh, this is a thing that even if it's only like one other person, like one person in 3 years compiles the Canabalt code and then just reads through it line by line because they just need to make some sausage, and it helped. Yeah. And then they make the sausage. Incredible. Because like that would have been me. I don't know. I'm really excited about it.
And now there's more sausage, which is, good for everyone. So
there cannot be enough. Not all of it's good, but there still can't be enough.
So I'd love to hear a little bit about how the actual process of updating Canabalt for HTML5 went. What was that like, Cameron?
Yeah, I guess Adam gave me all the ActionScript 3 code, and luckily, I guess, the framework I use and the language that it's made in is very, it does kind of have all its kind of ancestors and roots in kind of ActionScript 3 and Flixel, where it's like hacks, the language is very, it was kind of made as a replacement, maybe not replacement, but as a for ActionScript developer safe haven.
Yeah, I feel like
You know,
its roots were even before Flash was dead. Like hacks existed just to have something that was like outside of Adobe's
yeah,
control or lack thereof.
yeah, it would spit out like Swift and stuff like that, like, and
Yeah.
then and then I guess the next kind of few layers up of the abstraction is OpenFL, which is of course the kind of Flash re-implementation in hacks. So that's already there, and then right above that is Hacks Flixel, which is the kind of Flixel implementation in hacks, which kind of borrows a lot of the same, I guess, the APIs, the same kind of code bits and blocks. So I guess it was very, I mentioned it in the little Slack channel between when working on it, where it's like, it felt like, translating from Old English to New English, like translating some like, Shakespeare, where it's like, okay, instead of ye olds, this, it's like the old, like pub. It's like, just a lot of kind of, you could say like syntax and grammar kind of like updates like that kind of made porting like very easy. Like the finished code is very, very similar to what kind of Adam wrote, all those years ago. And I kind of specifically did want to, keep it that way. It is very, all the logic is like very similar of, okay, this gets parsed this way. And, that's halfway because of, keeping kind of parity with the original version. And also, kind of almost, I guess you could say, very pretentious way to say it, but respecting the original source code, because this was going to be published open source kind of release. So I guess the porting was very kind of straightforward of translating Old English to New English, and then when certain things are lost in translation was kind of problem solving. The stuff like particle system is like kind of like very initialized different. Some of the tile stuff was like different, so it was very part just kind of translating, part problem solving for whatever mistranslations or occur. It was very fix the discrepancies and look into I was also able to look into both the exact version of Flixel that Adam used, because it was included in the source code, and then able to look into Hexflixel code and see what might be different, I guess, is the case where it's like, oh, in Hexflixel the frames update the collisions in this way, but in the old version it updates it on some weird event listener or something like that, where it's like able to kind of look at even those kind of discrepancies and kind of have a, I guess even for myself just personally, just better understanding of both. And then I guess it was very much just I had I guess the experience, the development days of it were very, I kind of had this weird, I guess you could say like insomnia. I think I was just having way too much caffeine at the time in January, where I would just be like up all night, just kind of like crazy programming grinds of just like working on things. And I guess a cute little anecdote is I went to MegFest like January 20th, and I was working on the Canabalt thing, and that was also like my crazy maniac sleep. I was like, I got to MegFest at like 10 p.m. one night, and then just like all the festivities were like dying down like late into the night. So it's just like 2 a.m. where it's like, well, I was gonna sit in this beautiful, opulent lobby and just like program all night. And well, I just spent, worked on Canabalt from my lack of sleep and my lack of hotel room, my lack of Airbnb. So yeah, that's definitely a very. I'll definitely remember that. I'll definitely remember working on Canabalt, importing it, and having just random people come to me and be like, "He's like, what are you working on?" I was like, "Hey, I'm porting this old classic Flash game, and it's a Flash game, and then I'm working on this new language. It's called Hacks," and they're like, just like, "Wow, that's awesome." So that's the Canabalt development anecdote, or Canabalt port development anecdote from me.
That's awesome. I have vivid, super positive memories of writing Flash games on underpowered laptops in public places in New York City that I just treasure very deeply. I think it's a great way to make a Flash game. I did one, and I was at Blipfest, not Magfest, but like I definitely have made Flash games in the lobby at Blipfest before. It's so fun, but like that, and that's like I think you're like those when you're doing a little game that's lightweight and you can make one change and you can see it right away. Like it's almost a different activity. Like it feels more fluid and rewarding to me to work that way. And yeah, Canabalt. So originally Canabalt is not just on like at this point a kind of archaic language, but it was also like a really basic version of the framework in some ways. So the final state of the Flixel framework was based a lot on using it for a year or two after Canabalt came out and trying to make some performance improvements. And like, I don't think original Canabalt had decoupled display from input, for example, or like there are a lot of kind of like things that were important for like web game stability things that may not have been like present there that got added later. Right. So I have to imagine like ferreting out exactly coming across like, oh, this part is charmingly primitive versus this part is frustratingly primitive. I imagine had to be present, but I wanted to say that I think it is fun that we went for something that's really authentic, but specific, not to sort of like coddle my original artistic vision or whatever, but because specifically I think because it was a jumping off point for other designers and other programmers. Like that's so like the authenticity element for me is fun because like it's like we're putting out something that is really close to the jumping off point for other people, and we know that it was a cool, fun jumping off point for them. So like we were never going to add guns to this port, but like I'm glad that it is like it's those raw materials that we responded to and that other people responded to. We kept those centered, I think is really nice.
Right. Yeah, I guess even for myself, you know, the jumping off points, or I guess cute little technical things that I've spoiled myself with, where it's like the getting it to work on mobile and through the web HTML5, just kind of like pure web browser mobile versions, and I guess polishing kind of the technical things like that to a nice little point, and the even something very just like the little preloader where it's like damn, I just I like remade the original kind of like Flixel splash screen that Canabalt used in like Hacks Flixel preloader kind of logic, and that was very just spoil myself with something like that. I feel like was very refreshing, and makes me feel like it's like that's my little salt and pepper, little mama's recipe in that one.
I wonder if people who don't if people who don't make a lot of games, I wonder if they know that you could spend easily the same amount of time making your like loading screen as like your core gameplay loop. Like on a small enough arcade game, those end up being about the same size of project.
Yeah, literally, where it's like I did spend just like a 8-hour binge on just like the preloader of just like it's like, okay, I gotta render it. It's like this is how the Flixel thing rendered it, and it's like it fades in these colors in a specific way, and I gotta do that with like these weird polygons, and I gotta make sure it like It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I gotta make the like loading bar, and also it's like the loading bar, like weird asynchronous kind of code is kind of like annoying also.
Yes.
Where it's like
Yeah.
the loading bar didn't look right, and it's not positioned right, and now the font is broken. Why is the font broken? Because it's in preloading and it didn't load the font right or something. It's just like
Yeah.
getting all that like nice and hopefully, I guess, polished.
Do we have, either of you, any hopes for this next generation of Canabalt?
I have a specific one, which is I hope it ends up on. So in middle school, they have a thing called unblocked games. I don't know how much this is common knowledge or if I'm like narking, but because schools have to whitelist Google resources, and you can use Google to make little websites. Kids make their own web game hubs. They make their own weird knockoff Newgrounds, basically, that host HTML5 games. And schools just block them when they find out about them. So currently, at least as of the fall, the latest iteration that was as yet not blocked on the school's firewall was called Unblocked Games 68. If that gives you a sense of how this process goes.
It's an arms race, man.
Yeah. So if we end up on Unblocked Games 68 or even Unblocked Games 69, I think I will be just over the moon. I couldn't be happier. I'm delighted. I'm still delighted. I've already met all my hopes for this have already been met. But if that happens, cherry on top.
Be holding out
That's
hope.
inevitable, dude. They're Chromebooks. They can only handle so much.
Yeah.
So much Flash emulation, dude.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
gotta update it.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess. Yeah, my hopes. I guess my hopes, I think, is very, just the kind of classic open source hopes of just, it's like, yeah, same as Adam mentioned earlier, where it's like, even if one person just like, it's like, oh, hey, this game is awesome, and even I just want to, how do I compile it? It's like, oh, go through the compiler, it's, download hacks, download these things. I definitely wanted to make, compiling as easy as possible so that someone can kind of have that same kind of taste of that little piece of game development where it's like, oh, it's like there's words on my screen, and then I type these things into the terminal, and then I get a video game. It's like it is putting a pile of goop into the oven, and then it turns into bread. Beautiful bread.
It's just press a button,
like
right? It's like you don't have to press a lot of buttons. You don't have to do it perfectly, but if you just type this thing into the terminal, you will get a game.
Yeah, or it's like I feel like if people are able to have that with this cute little port, it's like very fulfilling and very just like, damn, it's like, now go on and lose your mind about asset caching bugs. have a wondrous game development journey, you.
Yeah, they're gonna be so mad about preloaders in no time.
Yeah, so that's definitely one. I guess the other is just people just doing crazy things with it. Of just, I guess with my game Friday Night Funkin', there's a very big crazy modding scene that kind of did come about from the game being open source. The code that I write for the versions, I put them out, and then people work off of that, and that very much has led to this crazy kind of, I don't know, its own kind of very subculture of our game. So I feel like that's seeing someone make little modifications to the thing is cool. Seeing people even just make little pull requests where it's like, hey, I fixed this thing. It's like, wow. It's like, you did compile it. You did go through that. Yeah, I guess seeing things like that is very, very happy. And yeah, and also people see, okay, the true answer is seeing people go crazy over the leaderboards. That's the hope. That's the hope version, where it's them just going crazy, be like, I gotta get the high score for this week. Last week it was this asshole, but me, he's my rival. He's my rival. I gotta beat him on the Canabalt leaderboards this week.
I love that. Any final comments from either of you?
Oh, I mean, I think my big thing is like this is such a good opportunity to just say thank you, Cameron, for instigating this and for like drinking too much coffee at MagFest and making all this stuff. Thank you for being patient while we got like our ducks in a row on our side, and thank you for like supporting it. I've seen the get lots of activity on the repo and stuff and questions from people, and it's I feel super lucky that like the game is out there and it's available for people who want it to be available, and you just thought this up and did all this. It's so great. It's just great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, no problem. Yeah, and thank you for allowing me, giving me the opportunity to have a little piece in this, I guess, awesome game. Yeah, it was very, I guess, refreshing to work on a very cute, short project as opposed to a large, ambitious commercial game. And I feel like it gives me wise insights on the big commercial game, such as being, cute little development, iteration type things. I think stuff like that. I think just working on anything just makes you wiser. So working on this specifically, it was very, very refreshing to see something through, I guess, from beginning to end, which, when you work on a big commercial thing, it's, not something you might get very often, unless you're very, strict with milestones or very strict with, deadlines. Seeing something through from beginning to end was something that I was a bit, I guess you could even say, starved of working on the project I am now. So it was very refreshing to be able to be like, hey, I'm hands off of this now. This is done. This is what I intended it to be, and I achieved that, and I'm hands off. That's it now. It's like that's food that I ate, my delicious dinner I made for myself. Yeah, it was very awesome experience.
Yeah, bless the project that is shorter than 3 to 7 years. Shout outs to that project. And I think we should close with thoughts from Markiplier, who says that Canabalt is one of his favorite simplistic games.
In Markiplier we trust. God bless.